everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Am Jane. It's nice to have you guys here. Today's going to be a slightly different video from what I've done in the past, but for those who have been watching me for a while, you've probably heard me mention my obsession with a really good documentary. I'm always on the hunt for new good documentaries on Netflix, and I get really excited when they add a new one. So I had started watching, I ended up watching a bunch this month, and I started off by having them on the list of things for the May favorites video, and then that little sticky note started to get really filled up. So, like, really filled up, like even writing things on the side. And I realized there was no way this was all going to fit into one monthly favorites video. So I decided to take the documentaries and put them on a separate list. And there are 6 of them. And do a separate video. So that way if people who don't care about documentaries, they just didn't have to click on this video, and people who are looking for new good documentaries to watch, this is your video. This is for you. So these are all on Netflix, or that's how I watched them. They might be available on some other viewing platforms. I'm not sure about the availability depending on what region you are watching Netflix from. I know that Netflix in the UK can get different things from in the US. I'm not sure about Netflix up in Canada or whatever country you might be watching from, but hopefully most of these will be on your Netflix. If not now, then hopefully soon, so keep an eye out for them. I definitely tend to go a bit dark with my documentaries, the ones that I really fall in love with. So there are some kind of warnings with some of these, and some of them tend to be very crime related. So the first one is A Murder in the Park. It was in 2014. It was originally filmed. I'm going to pull the films up on the Netflix app on my phone so that I can give you the official synopsis. So, A Murder in the Park, this documentary excoriates a noted anti-death penalty activist and his team whose questionable methods got a convicted killer freed in 1999. So the premise of this documentary is, it was a professor at a university at Northwestern, I believe. He and his class researched this notable murder case, and the convicted killer was on death row, and they basically got him freed. They got the case overturned. They found what they claimed was new evidence, but the twist about 5 minutes in, not even that, is that he actually was guilty. So this case kind of became the landmark case that got this particular state, I think it was Illinois, to get rid of the death penalty, which I'm in favor of. I don't agree with the death penalty, but it ends up being that it's the wrong case, and it's really interesting. It gets into, because then they investigate who this team claims is the real killer, and it just becomes this huge mess that really exposes the difficulty with the press, the difficulty with the justice system, the legal system, the prison system, the class system, because the people that are being accused are African Americans from a lower socioeconomic background, so they don't have access to strong legal representation. So it just gets into a whole bunch of different things, but the documentary is really well done. It really keeps you guessing, but also exposes you to a lot of really interesting things. You know, the human interest angle of it is really compelling. You do find yourself questioning a lot, because you buy into different aspects and think you know something about the case, and then you realize you don't know. And so it really makes you stop and think about your preconceptions and stuff like that. So the next one is The Return, which is a documentary from 2016. This film examines the many challenges of reintegration faced by convicts and their families after new law mandates the prisoner's early release. So this documentary looks at the state of California. They had a proposition that got passed that basically overturned I think it overturned the 3 strikes rule. So there had been a huge crackdown in the 90s, I think, where on your 3rd felony conviction, even if it's a non-violent crime, like a drug-related crime, on your 3rd crime, it might even have included misdemeanors, I can't remember, someone can correct me in the comments. But basically on your 3rd time, you got essentially a life sentence. So you had a large number of people, again, primarily from a lower socioeconomic background, and a mix of races, which was interesting about that documentary. But the common denominator was definitely a lower socioeconomic background, who were doing life sentences for really minor, non-violent crimes. And this documentary focuses on, once that got overturned, a lot of these prisoners were able to apply for an early release. Basically, they were able to apply to have their life sentences reversed and get reduced to time served. What's interesting about this is because they still have technically committed a crime, it's not like someone being released after being wrongly convicted. In those cases, they're often entitled to a certain amount of restitution for the time served because they were innocent. But in this case, these men are guilty of some kind of crime or another. So they've had, in some cases, a huge portion of their life taken away for really minor crimes that for just about anyone else in any other state might not have had more than 1 or 2 years. And some of these men have spent 20 years in prison, and they come out with nothing. And it's really about how they deal with that, how they start to rebuild their lives with nothing. Some of them have families that are able to take them in, but there are pros and cons to that. And again, it's just, I found it really interesting, again, to see how race and class plays so heavily in the legal system. In a similar documentary, but slightly different, After Innocence, which is from 2005, so it's a little bit older, but in this gripping documentary, filmmaker Jessica Sanders looks at the reverberations of criminal convictions since reversed thanks to DNA evidence. So this one is about people being released from prison who were innocent, who should have never been put in prison in the first place. The interesting thing about this one is how diverse some of these victims of false or wrongful incarceration are. One of them was a police officer, and he still seemed to get railroaded into a conviction. But you start to see how corrupted some of the prosecution offices are, and how focused some police and prosecutors can be in, once they make up their mind that someone is guilty, they go after them. It's infuriating, but also it's one of those things where I just feel it's so important for the public to be aware of some of these issues. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so drawn to documentaries, because I'm always learning something new that's really making me see other people in a different light, and kind of things that I used to have very strong opinions on. It kind of makes me rethink those strong opinions, and why do I have those strong opinions, and maybe I wasn't as informed as I thought I was. So After Innocence is just a really good one. It was a tough documentary in some places, but also really positive and inspiring in other places. And then 2 more documentaries. One that I watched just last night is called Am Jane Doe. This one was heartbreaking, but also so interesting. So this is new, this is from 2017, so it's this year. This intense documentary follows real cases of American girls enslaved in the child sex trade through ads in a newspaper's online classified section. So this is about teenage girls who are basically abducted and put into the sex trade here in the US. Like, it's one of those things where you want to believe that this kind of stuff doesn't happen in our own country, but it does. They have ads put up for them as escorts, prostitutes in online classifieds. The main one that they go after in this documentary is called Backpage, which is apparently the second biggest classified website after Craigslist. It goes into how Backpage basically collaborates in this and helps make this possible because they get so much money from the ads. And so they have a financial interest in looking away and letting it continue. The twist to the documentary is they are protected by an amendment that was meant to protect websites like Facebook. If I went on Facebook and I went on a long tirade against a company, the company could sue me potentially, but they can't sue Facebook. And so the documentary really gets into how Backpage isn't as innocent as it claims to be, and it doesn't deserve the protections provided by, I can't remember if 230 is the amendment or the clause, but section 230 of this amendment. So the documentary is just really heartbreaking to hear their stories, but then also absolutely infuriating to see the way that people are trying to cover themselves and protect themselves and not do anything to stop it. And then to also see all the amazing people that are stepping forward to stop it. So I just thought that one was really powerful, really difficult. But again, it's one of those things where we as a society have to educate ourselves to the fact that these things are happening, and they're happening in our own cities, in our own countries, and knowledge is power. So the more we know, the more we can speak out and try to make change on this. So the final documentary is The Keepers. This is a Netflix original documentary series. So there's 7 episodes. The synopsis is 2 former students launch a dogged investigation into the cold case of Sister Catherine Sesnick, a nun who was slain in Baltimore in 1969. So basically her 2 former students set out to try to figure out why she was killed and who killed her. I don't want to spoil anything because there's so much in this. I will say, because this goes along to the kind of trigger warning that I would put on this documentary, they very quickly uncover by the end of episode 1 and the beginning of episode 2 that they believe her murder is connected to a sexual abuse case at the Catholic high school where she was a teacher. This sexual abuse case becomes kind of the secondary mystery. There's so much in this documentary, and it is so brilliantly written, shot, edited. The story, the way all the stories weave together, the way all the evidence is presented. I would say if you were a fan of the other Netflix documentary series, Making a Murderer, I think you'd really like The Keepers. It's very similar, a different type of story, but in terms of the case being investigated, but the way that it's filmed and told. And then the story itself is just so, both the murder and the sexual abuse case. I would say episode 2 and 3 especially, if stories of sexual abuse is a really sensitive subject for you, it's pretty graphic descriptions. They don't pull any punches, which I think is important. I think it's important for people to know what is involved in this kind of abuse. I appreciated that they didn't dance around it. The victims are able to fully tell their stories. But if you are someone who is very sensitive to that, episode 2 and 3 especially, but even certain parts throughout, would be very difficult for you to watch. So that would be my one warning to attach to The Keepers. But overall, it was just so brilliantly done, and the story is just it's so unbelievable, and yet there's so much evidence that they present and the stories that the victims share. You think that only Hollywood could write this, but it's real. So it was a really fascinating but also heart-wrenching documentary to watch, but I would really strongly recommend it. If you are really sensitive about those types of subjects, I would say avoid it, but if you, like I am, are drawn to crime dramas and crime mysteries and unsolved cases, it was really good. And really, really powerful. I mean, your heart breaks for the victims, but it's one that stays with you. So this video has now gotten really long, and I'm going to have a wonderful time editing this. So yeah, if you've seen any of these, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. The Keeper just got released on Netflix on May 19th. So that's recent. I think Am Jane Doe just popped up on Netflix too. So if you've seen any of these, let me know in the comments. If you've seen any other documentaries and have recommendations, I'd love to hear what your documentary picks are in the comments, or just say hi, and I will see you all very soon in the next video, which will be May favorites. I'm going to film that right now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.